Hey, let's take a look at some trivia you may not know from the 1991 Tony Scott movie. This is the extended review of The Last Boy Scout. Let's acknowledge the fact that everybody hates everybody. When was the last time you heard that a composer hated working on a movie? I have never heard about it, but Michael Kamen hated working on this one, and the only reason he did the score for this movie was the fact that because he apparently was good friends with both Tony Scott and Bruce Willis. Speaking of Bruce Willis, this man apparently has very few friends in Hollywood, and he usually shows up on lists with actors that nobody wants to work with because they hate him. And in this case he was hating with Damon Wayans a lot. They were supposed to be the buddies in these ones, but they hated each other. I would probably guess that it was Damon Wayans who hated working with Willis than the opposite. Although it seems like Bruce Willis rubs everybody the wrong way. If you ask Kevin Smith, and you can ask Michael Bay, and you can ask Anthony Fuegia and Sybil Shepherd actually from their work in the mid-80s in, was it Moonlighters? Moonshiners? Moonshiners. I think so. And then we of course had Tony Scott himself, who hated working with producer Joel Silver. He hated working with him so much that if you've ever seen the movie True Romance, you might have come across the word Lee Donovitz. Movie producer, cocaine dealer, and absolute asshole. This character was apparently created by Tony Scott just to show what an absolute bastard Joel Silver was. And as you probably guess if you've seen True Romance, damn, Joel Silver must be a hard man to work for. Damn. Stuart Bird, savior in the editing room. Now, animosity at a level of this epic multitude must affect the movie somehow. It cannot create good working conditions when everybody's just hating each other all the time. So a couple of months before the release of this movie, Warner Brothers took in Stuart Bird, probably mispronounced that, editor who saved their asses with the movie Tango and Cash a few years earlier. And he was basically re-edited the entire movie. Apparently, some test audience that saw this movie saw this sort of original version of the entire thing, and it was apparently quite a different movie. I don't know if he either saved the movie or just twerked it a little bit, because apparently he made a completely new movie out of the existing materials. Because one thing I have always maintained is that editors are the ones who will decide whether or not the movie is going to work or not. You can save a movie from absolute disaster in the editing room and make it into an absolutely amazing movie. Case in point, Star Wars. And you can take a surprisingly good movie and you can turn it into absolute horror with sloppy and horrible editing. Case in point, Mr. Nice Guy. I don't know what Stuart did, but I think it was for the best. Speaking of versions, the original script. If you know anything about Shane Black, you know two things. One, that he writes scripts that has a lot of darkness in them, despite being funny movies, and that his movies will ultimately be a bit polished up by the studios, who will also decide to not allow him to kill off characters he wants to kill off, which he has been trying to do for 20 years and never succeeds with it. This is also one of these cases. The version we see is a completely different version of than the original script, which apparently was a lot darker and was a lot, bloodier and nastier. Apparently it was so brutal and so bloody it would have almost turned up an NC-17 rating. In a rare case, I actually think it probably wouldn't have worked as good. The whole third act was completely different. It took place at the stadium with the assassins. It was a huge boat chase, and they had helicopters, and it was fog, and they were ramming into each other, and they also had this huge shootout in the mansion of Marconi, and they also had a different version of why Hallenbeck had become a bum and all that. In the released version, it is because he punched out, I don't know, was that the president or was that the senator? I'm a little puzzled. Anyway, he punched out the senator dude because he was beating up some prostitutes or whatever. In Shane Black's original script, he refused to cover for the senator's son who had killed a mother and a child in a drunken drive accident. And they framed him with, planting drugs in his house and stuff like that, and that would also create a huge amount of animosity between them, which would would have made more of an impact in the original script. It also would have put more focus on our two main villains, especially Milo, who, the version we see in this version is basically the kindergarten version. Because, well, Milo was an absolute fucking lunatic and snuff filmmaker. Hooray! Isn't life wonderful? Yeah. So Milo would not only have been, like this creepy bad guy who was, far above average of the, average evil dude. He would also have been a hitman who would also make snuff movies, and he would, kidnap women, and he would, murder them in very, very, very violent ways. It started almost sound like a Saw movie. I don't think it would have worked actually, and he would actually have, killed an entire family just, because they stumbled across him, and all of these things would, of course, make us hate him more, but I don't think the humor that the rest of the movie has would have worked with a subject this dark. It clashes too much. Also, he was going to have to try to kill Joe's wife with a chainsaw. What the fuck is wrong with you, Shane Black? Jesus Christ, man. We're trying to have a nice movie here, and you want to have snuff movies and chainsaws? Jesus Christ. Tony Scott and Shane Black has maintained that they think that the original version was the better ones, but it would have been a different movie for of course, but I personally don't think it would have been, a better movie. I think it would have been a different movie, but I think I would have, I don't think it would have gone up so high on my list. I don't think I would have put more than maybe, 75, 76. Not as high as I've given this movie originally. It is the kind of thing that is almost impossible to know what version would have been the better ones. With the snuff movies and boat chases in the fog and corrupt politicians. Personally, I wouldn't trade it for the movie we got. What are we going to review next? I don't know. You're gonna have to stay tuned to find out. This is the Wikstrand signing out.